The podcast.
And we're live. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Felix. How are you doing, John?
I'm fantastic, Felix. How are you?
I'm good. Now, we have a special guest today. We have Killian Blacoe, who's doing a segment called Blacoe's Bygones. Blacoe, take it away.
So, what we're going to be discussing today is, I guess, since New Year's Day has gone past or is approaching, depending on when this is released, we are going to, we are going to be discussing kind of the evolution, I suppose, of New Year's, mainly today in the Western world, because try to fit it all into one episode, and just the Indian subcontinent alone would be an episode, would be a full segment. So we'll start today just with the evolution of the Western world. And so
Sounds good to me, Blacoe.
Yeah, well, so I thought it should be an interesting thing not many people know about, because if you think, like, most people just think, you know, January 1st, New Year's, but doing some research into this, depending on what part of the world you're in, it could be any day. I mean, the Chinese New Year is usually between around the 15th of January to the 20th of February, and they call it the Spring Festival, and it's actually their biggest holiday, which is, you know, very markedly different to our one. And I just thought it was interesting, especially because up until about the last 500 years, even in Europe, New Year's Day wasn't on the 1st of January. So I just thought...
When was it?
It really depends on the country. So say, for example, actually, in, say, the United Kingdom and America and its colonies, they had their New Year's up until 1752 was actually on the 25th of March. And it was on the Christian holiday, the Feast of the Annunciation. So it's just, you know, when the Archangel Gabriel came to the Virgin Mary.
So that's very tied with religion.
Yeah, okay, yes and no. Religion plays a massive part in it, but it goes in and out. So so from where we actually get New Year's, so the calendar in which we use now is called the Gregorian calendar. And that came from actually Pope Gregory.
Okay. And how far back are we talking here with this Gregorian calendar? Is this like in our memory, or is this way before?
Oh, way before. So Pope Gregory, I think it was the 13th. He in 1582 he wrote his papal bull. You know, it's a letter basically saying Catholics, you have to do this. And it was called Inter Gravissimas, which is Latin for amongst the most serious. And his is just a small modification. So he just reduced the length of a day from 365.25 days to 365.2425. I mean, to us, you know, that's nothing.
Yeah.
But it actually does make a difference, because
that had huge consequences, right? Like that.
Well, I'm going to get to that in a second, because it was actually a very minor modification from the calendar called the Julian calendar. And that was what most of Europe used for a long time. But the reason the Gregorian calendar was changed was because we missed a few days. So that minor modification, so say, for example, you know, the October Revolution in Russia, the communist update, that was actually in November. They were just using the old calendar. Okay. So it does have a difference, but you know, but the calendar before that was called the Julian calendar, and it was put forward by Julius Caesar. And we adopted it to mean, say, you know, Common Era or before Common Era, or if you're a Christian, it's BC and AD. But actually, what it was based on was AUC, which actually is Latin for Ab Urbe Condita, which means from the founding of the city. So the Roman calendar was based then from the foundation of Rome all the way, for example, it actually took effect in 45 BC. But the first day in that calendar was the 1st of January, AUC 709.
Okay. So what does what you're telling us now, how do we see the repercussions of these changes in our world today? So when we some of us have a calendar hanging in our house, when did that calendar become the commonly used? And is that calendar the commonly used calendar around the world, or are there different calendars?
Okay, good question, actually. As for different calendars, there are a lot of different calendars. So Gregorian calendar would be the most common calendar in the world now. And is that
the one we have here?
That's the one we have now. And even the Japanese have moved their traditional New Year onto the Gregorian New Year. But there definitely are. There are different, like, for example, I believe Islam use a calendar called the Harishi calendar. Chinese use the traditional Chinese calendar. North Korea, I know, obviously, an enclosed state, uses a solar calendar. South Korea also uses a version of solar calendar, but I believe they also do use Gregorian. So the Gregorian is, I guess, I suppose, like, like time zones.
Yeah.
Europe set it, so we have an international standard, but there are definitely local differences. Like even Ethiopia, for example, there's 2 different New Year celebrations, and in Ethiopia you could be anywhere from the year 1900 to the year 2100.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
crazy.
I remember hearing when I was younger as well. It's like, wow, they're in the future, not even comprehending the fact they just use a different calendar. But like, it was all over New Year's was genuinely all over the place. But just going back, so the first people we know to have celebrated New Year's was Mesopotamia. It was a country in modern day Iraq in about 4000 BCE. The name of the major city, which a lot of people refer to it as Babylon, is in the Bible.
Oh, okay.
They're usually the bad guys, but but they were a very, very advanced civilization. Like, the way we use 60 a lot in maths, like 360 degrees, 60 seconds in a minute.
Okay.
They were the ones who put that forward because, if you think about it, like 10 is good but it only goes into 1, 2, 5, and 10.
Yeah.
But 60 as a base goes into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
wow,
12, 15,
that's incredible.
60.
Oh, wow, okay.
This is mind-blowing, man.
Blacoe, you're blowing minds right now. Yeah, okay.
No, honestly, like, they're very advanced civilization. One of the first, if not the first, I can't be quite sure if they were the first examples, or no, that was Phoenicia, I think, of writing. But they were very advanced, especially, we still use the legacy of the mathematics today. Really, really impactful. Also, actually, completely off note, but do you know who's contributed the most to mathematics in the world?
No.
What country? France.
Oh, this is very interesting, Blacoe, because me and John have just done a podcast about a French mathematician.
Really?
Yeah. So you'll have to stay tuned for that, Blacoe.
Oh, I would definitely will.
But explain to me, if you know, why is France the most significant in terms of mathematics?
Well, actually, to be honest, I'm not great in the field of mathematics. I just know a brief outline of history.
Yeah.
I can't tell you why exactly they are. I just know that from, say, the Renaissance period onwards, I believe, medieval period onwards, just a lot of the mathematical centers of the world were in the Kingdom of France, which then became the French Republic. I'm assuming a lot of it would probably have to do with after it became a republic.
Okay, fair.
After the Second Revolution. So after the Napoleonic Wars, after the end of the First French Empire and the First French Republic, it was probably just safer for thinkers to be there because there was less persecution.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. So I'm assuming more came from there.
Okay.
That's very interesting.
Sorry. But it was Babylon who were the first ones we know of who really celebrated New Year's in a set time. And they did it on what's called an equinox. And an equinox is basically just when the center of the sun lines up with the equator.
Okay.
So, like, and of the very advanced astronomers, the Greeks and the Babylonians, but this happens about twice a year. It's usually around 23rd of September and 20th of March. So the first New Year's we know was celebrated around the 20th of March. And actually, funnily enough, it was the Romans who first had New Year's in this calendar, the Julian calendar. But the first New Year's is actually 1st of March in the first calendar the Romans used, not the 1st of January. And only had 10 months to begin with. So it was March to December. But March wasn't its name. Because do you know what December means?
No.
It means 10. It comes from decim. Novem 9, Octo 8, Septem 7. So when we call December the 12th month, we're literally saying December, 10th month, 12th month.
Blacoe, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it went from 10, 9. They used to be called 1 to 10, and then a Roman king. There were 7 kings in Rome. The second king, King Numa, he established the 2 months of Januarius and Februarius, and then they became the first 2 months of the year. I don't know why he didn't make them the last 2, and then just put March first. Beyond me. But the reason Januarius was called Januarius, we call it January, is because the Roman god of beginnings and doorways, pathways was called Janus. So they named the first month after him. And then that's where we get our 1st January from. That's where we get
all the way back then.
Yeah, oh yeah. So the Roman kingdoms was about at least 500 BCE, probably further back. That's who's credited down.
So that's
Like
before Common Era, yes?
yes, yeah,
So,
BC before Common Era, same timeline as BC.
Mm-hmm.
They use the same year as the turning point of the Common Era.
You know,
But
that's something that's crazy to think, isn't it, John? That like something we're looking at that can be hanging on our wall is based on principles that literally were thought up like thousands of years ago.
Yeah,
you know,
it's actually crazy. You're blowing my mind today. Like
but it's also if you think about it, it's something it's something we really take advantage. We just look at the wall and say, yeah, this is whatever day.
Yeah.
And a lot of thought went into developing this. Like, you have to imagine, these are just people who had, if we're talking about, say, 400 BC, which is when a lot of the breakthroughs in Greece happened, from astronomy, mathematics, and the like. They had very little in regards to our technology. And yet they created, from using shadows, clocks, they mapped the stars, they found out the orbit of the Earth around the sun. And I know, actually, one thing that is really propagated a lot is, everyone said, oh, up until the 1400s, everyone believes the world was the center of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
There was actually Greek astronomers who were telling people that the sun was the center of our system, and they were creating models for the Earth revolving around the sun.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
And you have to think, but like, these people just had telescopes. And they didn't even have our calculators. So if you can imagine, like, say, if you're, I don't know, a sixth year in Irish school, or just about to do your A levels, or you're like senior year in high school, all of those like little mathematical equipment you have, like a compass, protractor, that's all they had. And they mapped the movement of our world relative to the sun and made a calendar around it.
That's insane.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Like.
Now, Blacoe, I have a question for you. It's a bit off topic, but it has to do with New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Okay. Now, it's very obscure, and it's just me asking a childish question, okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Fireworks.
Okay.
Fireworks. Where do they come from? Like, why do we decide to blow up colorful things in the sky when our year ends?
Okay. I honestly was hoping to get into that in the next episode. Because fireworks and gunpowder and the fireworks tradition actually comes from China and Chinese New Year.
Okay. So we've adopted that into our society.
Yeah. So gunpowder was invented in China. And while they did use it for forms of warfare, they actually used it very predominantly for celebrations and rituals, which is mind-blowing to think, because the first thing we saw when something exploded was, we're going to put this in a little barrel and make it shoot a little metal ball at other people so we can take their land. But the Chinese, the Chinese used it for warfare, but they also used it very dominantly for celebrations. And it's very interesting, because I know a lot of people definitely see Europe as historically it's the most advanced region in the world. And that's why, Europe is so dominant in world history.
Yeah.
But if you were to compare ancient Rome and China and ancient China at the same time, they would have been very, very, and like, remember, Rome is what brought the advancement of Europe miles ahead. And when Rome collapsed, it took about 1,000 years for Europe to start advancing to the same rate again. It still advanced, but very slowly.
Yeah.
And the Renaissance, French word for rebirth, was actually people rediscovering Roman and Greek works after the fall of Constantinople. Okay. So we're saying a civilization that was that advanced and that found an effect in Europe. A nation that rivaled it and surpassed it in some places existed in Asia. And a lot of people do really seem to forget how advanced China was.
Yeah.
We took a lot from them in absolute fairness to them.
Yeah, no, that's something that's really interesting, Blacoe, because we do, like you said, tend to think of ourselves as kind of in Europe as the center of the world, right? And that we brought like advancements all over the world. But really, from what you're telling me, it sounds like we took most of the advancements and brought them to our corner of the world,
Adam, I wouldn't say most of the advancements now. Europe
but
was
some.
Still... Oh, no, yes, definitely. We took some. And I mean, we definitely took some. And I mean, to be fair to China at that period as well, other point that you'll probably hear a lot on these episodes is a lot of these countries, so we refer to them to modern day as, say, China or India, or say even like, say, Nigeria. They are in no way, shape, or form one uniform nation, especially in history, but rather multiple nations who are constantly at odds with each other.
Yeah. Like
China's history, again, with China, its military history is very, very compatible with European military history. And
yet they use gunpowder for explosions in the sky, right?
So, well, look, they did both. They did both. Okay, but
yeah,
they definitely didn't. They definitely that's to be fair, that's definitely a discussion for another day. Trying to get into Chinese culture because it once you understand Chinese culture better, you'll definitely see their thinking and development. Yeah.
So Blacoe, just for a little recap situation going on, we have, so basically what you're telling us is you're leaving us with a few things that have absolutely blown my mind. Okay, like the first being that we call December, which literally means 10, the 12th month. You know, is there anything in the next
10, the 10th month?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, I got you. Wait.
10 to 12 months. Felix is right there.
Yeah, I'm right, John.
I don't know. Sorry. I tried to be smart, but just keep going.
We'll too much mind blowing.
Blacoe, this is time for the next episode. You can catch John up, okay? It's all good.
Yeah, so, that's fine.
So, Blacoe, just in a quick summary, okay? Is there anything, if anyone wants to learn more about this in the future, okay, just before we end off, what source could they use? If you were to name one, just hit us with a name.
If I had to name one, first, for most things, very good idea. If you Wikipedia and they go into the references page at the bottom, it'll give you a bunch of great references. Like, if I had to give one just overview of, I guess, New Year's, maybe more how people celebrate it rather than historically, Kamal Mehra, Festivals of the World, is phenomenal book.
That sounds great, Blacoe.
Yeah,
that's great.
So we're going to have to continue our talks on the Chinese aspect of this conversation in our next installment, which we will have soon. But I think that'll have to be it for today. What do you think, Felix?
Yeah, I think that's us. Thanks a million for coming on, Blacoe.
Sure, it's a pleasure. I love talking.
This has been Blacoe's Bygones on the podcast. And you know what? We'll leave it there. Thanks very much, Blacoe.
Sound out.
See you later.